Okay, so our lesson is the presence of descendants of slaves in America is dangerous to the USA because America led to us being stolen. America led to us being sold, and we're still in the land of America, which is not our land. Now, this topic comes to mind because a lot of us, when we deal with the issue of slavery, some of the Gentiles of this country have found smug and rather uh, convenient ways to digress from the significance of slavery in a number of ways by their statements. Like one of the most noble ones is, well, you know, every people in the world have been slaves at one time. Well, okay, I can understand that. But when you read this text of Exodus chapter 21, verse 16, it's talking about a specific people that Yah says there are severe consequences for enslaving them, even when they deserve punishment for doing wrong. Nonetheless, those that do the punishment of slavery, they themselves really are facing a serious penalty for having done that. So they found snug ways like, well, everybody been enslaved. Yeah, but Israelites are not everybody. Scriptures
That's
tell
right.
us we are a unique nation in the sight of Yah. We're a nation of priests. We are his peculiar treasure. So he's got a certain kind of relationship with us historically that makes us different than just everybody that's been put in slavery. I know that sounds a little egotistical, but it's the truth. Now, many European people whose ancestors immigrated to America after 1865, when slavery ended, many of these people love to say, we and our ancestors had nothing to do with slavery. You heard that one before.
Mm-hmm.
That was back then, and my people weren't even in America back then. My people were in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland. We had nothing to do with the slave trade. And well, yet according to Exodus chapter 21, verse 16, as long as the captivity of the slaves is still present in America, which it is, as long as the captivity of the slaves is still present in America among the descendants of the slaves, which we are, all other American nationalities are collectively held guilty and accountable before Yah as part of the American national entity, where the remnant of the Hebrew Israelite slaves are still found to be under the hand and control of this nation that enslaved them. In essence, yes, even if, say, for instance, their ancestors came to America after the Civil War and they came from countries, maybe some of them even, where they came fleeing persecution in those countries, say, for instance, in Eastern Europe. Nonetheless, because they are part of a collective national entity called America, then if they are as such citizens of a country that's holding Yah, that has held Yah's people captive who are still here, then for those people who claim, well, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, but nonetheless, you are part of a country that did do that collectively. And though you may not, they may not have been the actual ones that sold us on the auction blocks, nonetheless, they are part of a nation, they are part of a country that will be judged collectively. When Yah judges America, he's not going to be judging it based on who was here before 1865 or who was here after 1865. I mean, it's not going to be that. He's just going to judge America, the whole country. And well, it depends on what people want to accept and understand that if you made the effort of your ancestors to come here to a country that has held people kidnapped, that's held people in slavery. Well, I mean, I've heard people go to court with cases like, well, I was just with them. I didn't do it. They did it. I was just with them. Y'all ever heard court cases like that?
Yes.
Where, you know, they say, well, I didn't pull the trigger. I was just with them, but I didn't do it. I didn't pull the trigger. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Well, you know, there are laws that still nonetheless will do what? Go ahead, Sharon.
No, I could ask after you finish. I just wanted to.
No,
well, I was
go
gonna
ahead.
ask the people coming from like Africa to come here.
Yeah.
Would they be, you know, since they're coming to decided to come to a nation that kidnapped, does that hold true for them as well, or just people from everywhere else?
That's a good question. And that's something we got to really think and pray about, because actually, due to our relationship with the ones from Africa, particularly the Bantu, which most of us come from, because our ancestors came primarily from West Africa. And
Okay.
those from West Africa in particular are more closely related to us. So they're more, a lot of them are Hebrews themselves.
Mm.
And so as such, that may be a different story, but nonetheless, there were some people there in West Africa that are going to have to answer for that did sell us into slavery. But then there were a lot of us that were in West Africa that were victims of the slave trade and were fortunate enough to avoid being sent to America. So that will be considered. I do know this. There's a situation where even people from over there, when they get here, if you notice how they tend to take sides with white people
Yes.
against us. I've seen that a lot. And I'm sure you all have too.
Yes. Yes.
And well, they're under the illusion of inclusion. Well, they want to be included so bad. Well, unfortunately, they become like those people when the time of judgment comes. They say, well, I was just there. I didn't have nothing to do with them being in slavery and this and that. Well, I mean, like when a judge in a courtroom says, well, you were running with the people that did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I didn't do it. Yeah, but you were running with the people that did it. And
right.
You know what they call that? They call that being an accessory.
Right.
An accessory. I mean, you chose to be with the ones that did it and even take sides with them against the ones who they did it to.
That's right. Siding with the enemy. That's right.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So then that's a good question. That's a good question, Sharon. So according to this judgment, in the Torah, the scripture we just read, the continued presence of the Hebrews in America is a continual indictment for capital punishment and destruction of the United States. Now, people are basing their full hopes and promises upon a nation that incurred slavery upon the chosen people. Well, they can enjoy the benefits of those people that did it. But then there comes a time where just as they enjoyed the benefits, they will also have to incur the wrath from having become an accessory or affiliated with the ones that did it. Now, even though slavery ended in 1865 in America, the presence of the enslaved people, that's speaking of us, still makes all America to be found guilty before Yah. Yah's looking at this from a criminal case perspective. And well, if you were there and did not do anything to oppose it, and see, now there were some good white folk who did some things to oppose slavery, like John Brown at Harper's Ferry,
Mhm.
and some other ones. See, now that's going to be a different story for them.
Mm.
But then we see that there were those who didn't necessarily oppose it, and they didn't necessarily promote it, but they just stayed quiet about it. And see, that won't go well either before Yah. In other words, America's in trouble. Now, the Egyptians, in the time of the Passover, they faced some very severe judgments, culminating with the deaths of all of their firstborn because of their enslavement of the Hebrew people. However, the Egyptians, unlike America, they realized it was not enough to only free Israelites from slavery, but also to cause them to completely leave Egypt. And I want you to look at this scripture to explain what I'm talking about. Exodus chapter 12, verse 33. Exodus chapter 12, verse 33. And we read here, and the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, we be all dead men. So according to Exodus, here verse 33, the Egyptians realized, yes, we can tell the Hebrews that they're free, that we will no longer make them slaves here. Now that's what America did in 1865. It said, you're no longer slaves. But see, there's more to this than just saying that. The Egyptians realized they must also send these people out of their land.
Mhm.
See, the Egyptians saw that as long as we were in their land, that even if they stopped enslaving us in their land, they realized the fact, like it said in that verse, as long as we were under their hand, as long as we were found in their land, we were still in an indictment of judgment on them. And they understood that they must do all they could to move us out of their land. Because the more we stayed in their land, they saw more judgment was coming on their land. So they not only just said, you are no longer slaves in our land. The Egyptians likewise decided it was necessary for them to cause us to leave their land. Exodus 12:33 says this, and the Egyptians were urgent. They were urgent upon the people. And this is Exodus 12:33. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, we be all dead men. Now the Egyptians saw that it's not enough just that we say you free, but as long as you stay in our land, the indictment of death is on us. That is, they already lost their firstborn sons, but there was more death that could have come to all of them, because the Torah, the command says, he that stealeth a man and selleth him or puts him in slavery, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. Well, the Egyptians realized, yes, they could say you're free from slavery, but as long as we were still in Egypt, then we were still being found among them as an oppressed people that had been enslaved by them, and they could still be punished with more death. And so the Egyptians were wise enough to say, we got to completely get these people out of our land. The more they're in our land, the more we're going to die. So they said, they were urged to send Israel out of the land of slavery in Exodus 12:33, because they said, we be all dead men. Now we already know their firstborn sons died, but not all of them died. But they understood that the longer we stayed in Egypt, there was more disaster coming. So this is important, because there's another fact. Not only are they to ensure we're no longer in their land, you know, when we got out of slavery, they wanted to keep us in the land here to do other things. You know, they made us sharecroppers. They made us more or less second-class citizens, subservient, to still sustain and maintain their society in a number of ways. So we still, even to this day, live as a subordinate people under their authority to this day. A lot of our people done forgot that. But I tell you, you know how you can always tell is when you're on the job and some of them cross you and you have a legitimate right to express. You notice how they all gang up on you?
Oh, yeah.
Like, they have privilege. You know, the white privilege comes in. Like, you know, and I never forget the whole time Obama was in, they kept saying, we want our country back. We weren't talking about your country. They want to be back in control. So they put in Donald Trump to bring their country back to them. And he played that card. And they're going to always play that card. They're never going to stop that, because the judgment of death and destruction is on America for what they did to the children of Israel. They can never wipe this off of their collective national consciousness, nor are they smart. They're not even smart enough as the Egyptians to understand it. The Egyptians understand we got to get these people out of here. They can't live among us. And even when the Israelites ran away from them, and then the Egyptians said, oh, we're going to go and get them back at the Red Sea. Then y'all just destroyed the Egyptian army in the Red Sea. See, people don't understand the reality of the covenant Yah has with the children of Israel in lands where the children of Israel have been enslaved and carried away. One prophet, Jeremiah, says, all of those lands where they are scattered and carried away in captivity will be destroyed. And particularly as they are, you know, in a very cavalier way, saying we don't want our kids to learn this so-called radical race theory about how we oppressed the Black people. You know, they've been making a big political campaign issue about what they call that what kind of Black history they call that. They got a code word for it.
Critical race theory.
Yeah, critical. We don't want to learn critical race theory, where a white kid can be made to feel guilty that his ancestors were wrong. And so white folk are circling the white. In other words, instead of them getting better to figure out, you better be careful with what you're doing, they're getting more arrogant, and you can see the sentence of death is already on them.
Mhm.
They can't give it up. And yes, the other thing is the Egyptians were at least smart enough to say, look, at least up to a point until they did something stupid and fled down to the Red Sea to try to recapture it. But that's where they really got destroyed. Bad. Yeah. But anyway, the Egyptians at least were smart enough initially not only to send the people out of the land, not only say you're no longer a slave in our land, we want you, you got to leave our land. But the Egyptians also were smart enough to do this, that in sending away an Israelite slave, the Torah, the scriptures teach in Deuteronomy 15, verse 13 and 15, it teaches that Israelite slaves are never to be sent away from slavery empty-handed.
Mhm.
Let me read that for you.
Deuteronomy.
Chapter 15, verse 13 through 15.
Okay.
All right. It says this, Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 13 through 15. And when, I'll just wait till y'all get there.
Okay.
Okay,
And when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flour, out of thy flour, out of thy winepress, of that wherewith Yah hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yahweh the Elohim redeemed thee. Therefore I command you this thing today. So Yah said, every Israelite that's a slave, when their time of slavery is over, whatever the goods and benefits that those who enslaved them got, they were to give a portion out of those things to those slaves who worked for them to build up their economy. They were to give of their livestock and other commodities and resources. Well, America not only didn't try to move us out of this land, they refused to pay us for having built this land and or pay us for having been slaves in this land. You see, Yah said Israelites, if they're ever made slaves, that there's a way in which that whoever enslaved them, as they send them out, like we see in verse 13, without sending him out free from thee. You see, we left slavery, but we weren't sent out being free from the people that control this country. We just have to learn to survive. You know, we not only that they didn't send us out with what we needed. You know, they used to say 40 acres and a mule. They never did even that, which was not even enough in reality, because 40 acres and a mule was to give you something like a reparation, but you still living in the land of slavery. No, you only get those kind of resources when you're leaving the land of slavery. And so that's this Torah teaching, Deuteronomy 15, verse 13 to 15 teaches that Israelite slaves in leaving America should never leave empty. That is, they should be leaving with the cost of what their enslavement was. And of course, with the Egyptians, we see they only did that when they realized that they were in danger for not doing it. And that's the same case with the Americans. See, the Egyptians realized that they would still be in danger if they sent the Israelites away empty, that is, without pay. So according to Exodus 12, 35 through 36, it says, in Exodus 12, verse 35 through 36, it says, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moshe, and they borrowed of the Egyptian jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they plundered or spoiled the Egyptians. Now, as the Israelites prepare to leave America, we must take note of Yah's plan in the Torah scripture. America let us out of slavery. Judgment still hangs over America because we're still here, and judgment hangs over America because they have no desire to pay us. All right, so we're coming to a point following the 400 years that expired in 2019, where James gives us instructions about Yah's coming judgment in America. Now, first of all, Yah gives a warning to the rich oppressors. In James chapter 5, verse 1 through 6. Now, Yah's talking, this is a warning to the rich men of America. I mean, this is a warning to the Elon Musk and the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gates, all them kind of people. This is a warning to them. Here's what Yah says. Now listen, you rich people. And it's in the book of James, chapter 5, verse 1 through 6. It says, now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Now, the rich of America, this is a witness to them because, every time we're in economic uncertainty, you always see these people come on saying, now is the time to invest in gold. Now is the time to invest in silver. Well, the reality is all their investments are never investments to raise up money to give you. It's to enrich themselves. And they're just telling you, well, if you want to get anything, you got to be like us, and you've got to go through the business process like we have done and be entrepreneurs and get your own wealth and money. Yeah, it's amazing how people can say to play fair when it comes to you, but with them, they've been cheating and lying and pilfering all along and taking advantage economically of the system. And they've hoarded wealth in these last days. And then they got nerve enough to tell you need to invest in gold and silver. Y'all said that gold and silver, if it's not being used the right way for the right people, for the right reason, it won't mean nothing. You'll make it worthless. Verse 4 says, look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of Yahweh Elohim El Shaddai. So here's where Yah said, for all that the wealth you've made, the billions and trillions, you've not made an investment program for my people who you enslaved to build this country up. You just won't do it. In verse 5, you have lived on earth in luxury, self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. See, they're just making billions and trillions. They're not planning to use their billions and trillions to move you anywhere. They plan to use billions and millions to go to Mars or go in outer space or do other things, but they're not thinking about it being used for you, the ones that they had enslaved, or either they are accessories to the one that did that to you. It's either way. But one way or another, this country has a lot to answer for. And then he says, they condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing them. So now this tells us something very interesting. This culture, this society we call America, it's a society, it's a civilization that is comprised of people of European background that are what remains of the ancient Roman Empire. All of the countries like Germany, France, England, those European countries were once colonies of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was the one that condemned and murdered the innocent one, which is Yeshua. It was them 2,000 years ago. They killed Yeshua, then they destroyed your nation, they destroyed your land, they destroyed your country, and caused you to be led away captive among all nations, as it is to this day. And yet, now that they're in their crisis with Russia, and they're formulating a neo-Roman alliance called NATO, and wanting us to be invested in their fight with other Europeans, and looking to save the economies of those nations. None of their reasoning is that all of this is due to the fact that the day of payment for what they did to you has come. And if they won't do what they should do for what they've done wrong to the Israelite people for the last 2,000 years, whether it's the United States of America or whether it's Rome, Germany, France, whatever, all of them were involved in the slave trade. And yet none of them have had a collective plan how to deal with you. This is the time where Yah is bringing them to a point of recognition that they don't want to deal with. Instead, they are all campaigning against critical race theory. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to be brought to task about it. They'll find convenient little petty excuses not to deal with it. Well, everybody been asleep. You've got to get beyond that. Well, I'm here to tell them they may want to be like a ostrich with its head stuck in the sand to avoid hearing and seeing the reality. But see, y'all going to take that sand away, and they're going to see the hard reality that they're being judged for what they did to the children of Israel. Now, for the children of Israel, what we have to be sure and careful to do is we have to be patient. We have to be patient in suffering. And this is what James says to us in chapter 5 of James, verse 7 through 9. It says, be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the master's coming. That is, Yeshua is at hand to come. So be patient. You're going to hear them say all kind of crazy stuff against you and try to build a political cause against you and make it seem as though your call for justice for the historical mistreatment of your people is critical race theory, or either they're saying you're your wokeness. And they'll try to make it irrelevant through the national discourse. And yet this is going to all backfire in their face. And that's why Yah says, just be patient. Don't get angry. If they're coming out with critical race theory madness, because he says, see how the former, this is verse 7, see how the former waits for the land to yield his valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient. Stand firm because the master's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged, because the judge is standing at the door. And so rather than us scavenging each other and doing injustice to each other like crabs in a barrel, trying to make it and hustle and scuffle with each other in our community, he says, stand back. The judge is at the door. The day of judgment is on America. And America's getting ready to be destroyed. As long as you're here, and as long as you're not being paid, as long as you've not been sent to your rightful homeland, the land of Israel, and you're not, and you've been sent not empty, but you've been sent with resources to start your own nation, then this curse in Exodus 21:16, he that stealeth a man or selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. So there's a death sentence on America. And so the presence of descendants of slaves in America is dangerous to the USA.